Throughout the day, you will probably find yourself around people who are unlike you in various ways. In a way, every person you meet has something that is different from you. You may wonder, how can I help others if they all need different approaches? Sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone to help others who are different from you.
Some voters may consider themselves people with disabilities. Some may consider themselves simply as people who live their lives differently. Each person has their own strength and skills, all of which are most likely different from yours. Some people use wheelchairs or crutches, hearing aids, a white cane, or other devices to live independently. You will meet many diverse people on Election Day, including voters with disabilities.
It's common to be unsure how to best interact with someone who is a bit different from you. You might be afraid of saying something inappropriate or offending someone. The purpose of this video is to help give you confidence in how to best interact comfortably with people different from you. The key lesson is to communicate directly with the person and ask them how you can best help them.
Remember, every registered voter has a right to vote. It's important for you to encourage them to complete the voting process and to help them when needed. We won't be able to address every form of disability in this video, but if you remember the following key points and apply them consistently, you can assure that every voter has a positive voting experience. So let's begin.
As children, we were taught to treat others the same way we would want to be treated. That is the perfect mindset to have as you serve every voter. Treat everyone with respect and dignity. Now that we're discussing this, it might seem obvious, but it's easy to forget, especially when choosing the words we use. That's why it's important to focus on the person and not their disability. Put the person first and the disability second. I use a wheelchair and I'm a person with a disability, not a disabled person. Don't use words like crippled, handicapped, or special needs voter. Those words can be offensive or demeaning. And don't forget to use people's names once you've learned them. If the voter arrives with someone to assist them, remember to talk directly to the voter, not their assistant. You might need the help of the assistant to communicate with the voter, but keep in mind that it's the voter you are helping, not their assistant. So make sure the voter is the focus of your attention. Some disabilities are obvious, while many others are not. This can create a challenge when you're available to offer assistance, since you might not know exactly who needs it. If anyone asks for help and it's a simple request, you can provide it. If it's complicated, if it will take much time, or it will distract you from your job, refer them to the poll site coordinator. And just because somebody has a disability, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in need of assistance. That's why help should only be provided when it's requested. Here's an example of how this might work.
Excuse me. I just recently had back surgery, and I can't stand here much longer. Is there any way you can help me?
Okay, let's see what we can do for you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Did you notice how the person who actually needed the assistance was not obvious? And the people who had obvious disabilities didn't need any assistance at all? Most people with disabilities are very independent and get along fine without any assistance. So it's important that you provide help only when it's requested. If a voter indicates that they do need assistance, tell them what you can do and then help. If a voter asks you to allow someone to go with them to the privacy booth to help them vote, that's allowed as long as it's not their employer or union representative. Every voter has the choice to mark their ballot using a pen or a ballot marking device, which is also known as a BMD. It's important that each voter be able to choose which one they prefer. You should never assume how someone wants to mark their ballot. An important part of communicating effectively is your attitude. Think about your tone of voice. It's important not to make any voter feel as if they are an inconvenience. You are there to assist and to serve, so let everyone know that's why you're there. You don't want to be patronizing or talk to anyone like they're children. If they're voters, they're adults, so treat them that way. Following these key points not only will help make the voting experience more pleasant, but voters will be even more likely to participate in future elections.
Now, let's look at some specific examples of how you may be able to help voters by putting these ideas into practice. There's a good chance that you'll come in contact with voters who have limited mobilities. They might use a wheelchair, a walker, a cane, or they might not have any visible signs of a disability. Take care to respect each person's space. Don't hover over them. Avoid touching them or any equipment that they might be using. For most people, that equipment is part of their personal space and it should be respected. Most people don't like to be touched by strangers, and people with disabilities are no different. Also, be sure not to push someone's wheelchair unless asked. It's their chair, and they will want to keep control over it whenever they can. So, don't just push them where you want them to go.
Another group of people with disabilities are those of us who have communication-related disabilities. Many of us are deaf or hard of hearing. Our disabilities aren't always easy to spot, so be alert and think about how to communicate most effectively. Let's see what my recent trip to the polls was like. Think about how poll workers made my experience as someone who is deaf sometimes easy and sometimes difficult.
Hello. Do you know your ED/AD number?
No, I don't.
I'll look that up for you. What's your address?
Thank you. I live at 18 West 79th Street.
Please go to the table marked ED/AD 8356.
Hello. What is your name?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What is your name, please?
Oh, of course.
Can you tell me if the address on your ID is your current home address?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you look at me when you're talking?
I said, can you tell me if the address on the ID is your current home address?
Yes, it is, and you don't need to shout.
Sorry. Can you sign here? Thank you. Take this. You can go to a privacy booth right behind you.
Did you see how the poll worker realized that she was not communicating in a way that worked for both of us? Once she realized what she needed to do, she quickly adjusted her methods to meet my needs and to help me clearly understand what she wanted me to do. Here are some helpful tips to assist someone who is either deaf or hard of hearing that will make communication easy and prevent those awkward interactions. First, and most importantly, make eye contact and speak directly to the voter. Speak clearly and use short, simple sentences. If you don't understand something they said, don't pretend you did. It's okay to ask them to repeat themselves. If they're having a hard time understanding you, don't shout. Most of the time, volume isn't the problem, but rather background noises or the tone or clarity of the speaker's voice. That's why it's important to keep your hands and other objects away from your mouth and not to chew gum. This will make the task of reading your lips much easier for the voters who read lips. If the voter doesn't understand something you've said, try saying your question differently. If they didn't understand you the first time, chances are that simply repeating a question again won't help. Sometimes different words are heard and understood better than others. So try again, but in a way that is simple and clear. Finally, if verbal communication isn't possible, or if the voter prefers it, have a pad of paper and a pen handy for written communication. Now let's talk about voters who have speech-related disabilities. Just like when you're working with a voter who is deaf or hard of hearing, if you don't understand something the voter said, don't pretend that you did. Ask the voter to repeat what they said, and then repeat it back to them to be sure you understood them correctly. When you need to ask the voter a question, try to ask questions that require a short answer or a nod of the head, like simple yes or no questions. Be patient. Do your best to understand the voter, but if you continue to have difficulty, ask if they can suggest another option for communicating. They may offer to write their answer on your pad of paper, but don't assume that is what they should do. Though this communication might sometimes feel difficult, it's important that you not become impatient or try to finish sentences for the voter. Hear them out and show them that they are valued and that you will take the time and effort to understand them.